Hi guys, this is Dane Dormio with Martial Energetics, and today I'm starting a video series explaining some of the conceptual and theoretical underpinnings behind martial energetics. And today I want to start with one of the most foundational principles from all of Qigong, known as the Nonexertion Principle, also known as the 70% rule. The 70% rule, or the non-exertion principle, comes from Qigong. It's a very foundational principle of Qigong, and martial energetics is itself a form of Qigong. It's a type of Qigong. So the non-exertion principle applies to everything in martial energetics. And one way you can think of the non-exertion principle is it's sort of like a disclaimer. It's sort of like saying, you're responsible for your own health, wellness, and safety. You're responsible for taking care of yourself, for listening to your body. So don't overexert. The number 70% is in terms of your maximum capacity for any kind of activity. So your maximum capacity in terms of intensity, duration, range of motion, whatever your body's maximum capacity is. The ideal range to work at for purposes of Qigong is at around 70% of that. So if this was as low as you could go into this stance, then you'd work at about 70% of that. This would be your 100%, and you'd work at about 70% of that. Or if you could stand like this for a maximum of 10 minutes, and that's your 100%, then just standing like this for 7 minutes would be about 70%. The idea is that we don't want to try too hard, we don't want to overexert, and there's a couple of rationales behind this. One is, it has to do with energy conservation, and that's a concept that we'll talk about more in a future video. And there's also the concept of soft intent, which is another concept that we'll talk about in a future video, but it means not trying too hard. And I mean this in the sense that we're trying to develop efficiency and ease and grace, then struggling or overexerting or trying too hard is counterproductive to what we're trying to do. So yes, we're trying to achieve certain objectives or goals. We're trying to do things in the right way, but we don't want to try too hard, because that creates tension in the mind and body and distracts the automatic success mechanism, or interferes with the functioning of the automatic success mechanism, which requires that we give over control, so to speak, to our subconscious and relax our conscious control of things. Another rationale for the non-exertion principle is from the healing properties of Qigong. Qigong, of course, is a healing art, and 100% is maximum capacity. That's defined as the range or the place where injuries occur. So you could do anything up to 100% of your body's capacity, and you'll be fine. But the moment you exceed 100%, even by a little bit, you'll be causing stress on the body and creating injuries, whether acute, immediate injuries, like you pull something or you sprain something and you notice it right away, or repetitive stress injuries that you don't notice right away, but they build up over time the longer that you engage in an activity, the longer that you're overexerting, and you will think you're fine, you think you're building up your strength, and you're actually wearing your body down, wearing down the tissues, the connective tissues, wearing down your muscles, and then one day you wake up and for no apparent reason it just starts hurting and you can't walk on it, or it's incredibly painful and you don't understand why. This is the way that repetitive stress injuries tend to show up. They're sneaky, and they're one of the most common types of injuries in all types of athletic activity and physical activity. There's things that you don't even realize that you're doing at the time. You don't even realize you're exceeding your body's capacity, but over time the more you do that activity, you won't build up and gain strength from doing it. You'll just wear down and you'll get weaker and cause more injury to the body. So if we're working at around 70% of our maximum capacity, we're in a good range for continual incremental advancement and improvement. We can slowly and gradually build up our capacity, working at around 70% with about a 10% range on either side. So really you could consider it from 60% to 80% for normal purposes doing Qigong, for health, wellness, and longevity, and also for skill development, which is something that we'll talk about more in future videos. 60 to 80% or around 70% is the ideal range. If you're trying to build more athletic capacity, if you're trying to, if you want to do calisthenic type activities that load your body's capacity in terms of strength, duration, range of motion, if you want to do things that kind of stretch the limits, then the 80 to 100% range is what I call the calisthenic range, is where you'll work. It's still a form of Qigong. You're still abiding by the 3 regulations, which are what we're going to talk about in the next video. But in the 80 to 100% range, 80 to 99% range, 100% is where injury happens. But working in the range 80 to 99% or 80 to 99.9%, you can push your body's limits more and you can advance faster at a rate where you are not causing immediate, acute, or long-term repetitive stress type injuries to your body, where you're still able to function normally afterwards. You're not exhausted and you've hit a wall and have to collapse. And you're able to recover in a reasonable amount of time, so you'll be feeling fine the next day and you'll be able to do the same thing again the next day if you want to. So you're not tearing the body down as you go along, but you're incrementally building it up. And then if you are recovering from injury or illness, the range below 60%, from 1% to 60%, 0% you're doing nothing, which is called resting, and that's also good for recovery. But from 1% to 59 or 60% of your body's capacity, that's what I call the recovery range. That's where you're still moving energy in your body, you're still using your body, you're still regulating body, breath, and mind, and you're still doing things, but you're in a range where you're not exerting any kind of undue stress on the body. And it's 1% to 59% is completely variable and adjustable. If you're just feeling not so hot on a day, maybe you're getting sick, you're recovering from the flu or a cold or something like that, and you just don't have a lot of energy, maybe you'll work at 40%. Or if you're in the middle of having the flu and you're just practically bedridden, but you still want to do your Qigong, that's fine. You can work at 20% or even 10%, or inch it down to 1 or 3%. As long as you're regulating body, breath, and mind together, you're practicing Qigong, and you'll gain some benefits from that practice. And this also applies for injury. If you have an acute injury that is healing, you can still work that part of the body, you can still move that part of the body, just at an intensity that is easily able to withstand. And pain is the best indicator of this. If the pain is of a certain sharpness and intensity, that's a signal that you are damaging the body, that you're stressing the tissues beyond their capacity, and you shouldn't do that. Like the old joke, the guy goes to the doctor and says, "Doctor, it hurts when I do this." And the doctor says, "Well, don't do that." That's the same thing that Qigong says. On the other hand, there's a certain level and type of pain that just indicates that you're putting a healthy amount of of load on the tissues that they're able to withstand and adapt to, and that will actually accelerate the healing process. If you have a part of the body that's injured and you just don't move it and you don't work it and you don't use it at all, it will atrophy, it will weaken the flow of fluid and chi, if you believe in that sort of thing, through the area will be slowed down, and so it won't heal as quickly or as effectively or as completely as if you give it some movement and you work it some in that 1% to 59% range, guided by the level of pain. Generally, if the pain is on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being barely noticeable and 10 being the maximum pain that you can tolerate, you'd want it to be around a 6 to maybe 7, pretty close to the 70% rule. You wouldn't want it to go above 8. 9 or 10 is where you're definitely causing damage and setting yourself back in the healing process. But if the pain is at a level of about 6 to 8, then you can work in that range, and over time the pain level will go down as your body adapts, both over the course of a single session as well as over the course of multiple sessions. Your body will adapt. That's part of the healing process, and you can incrementally increase the intensity, the duration, the range of motion to where the pain level again approaches up to maybe a level of 8, to where it's tolerable and you can work with it and work in that range. So just to summarize, the 70% rule, the non-exertion principle, says that we don't want to try too hard, we don't want to strain, we don't want to overexert if we are trying to develop ease and grace and fluidity and efficiency and skill. And the range is 60 to 80% for normal Qigong, for health, wellness, longevity, and for skill development. That's the ideal range. If you want to develop more strength, or develop more capacity, you can load your capacity from 80% to 99%, which is a range where you'll be able to recover, you won't be exhausted, and you won't be setting yourself up for acute or long-term injury. You won't be exceeding or surpassing the 100% range, which is where injury occurs. And then if you're recovering from injury or illness, you can go down below 60%, 60 to 40, or even down as low as 1%. Basically the 1% to 60% range is the recovery range, where you can help your body recovery from injury and illness. You can help injuries to rehabilitate, and you can even work on older long-term injuries that have been around for a while and help them to heal completely. So that's the non-exertion principle, or the 70% rule, foundational principle of all Qigong, of all Tai Chi, and of martial energetics as well, as martial energetics is a form of Qigong. So I hope that that is helpful and useful to you guys. If you have any comments or questions, anything that you'd like me to know about, or anything that you'd like to know about, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. I plan to be continuing making these videos. I'm going to try to keep them short, 5 minutes or less, hopefully. Just explaining one little concept at a time, one little piece of the puzzle at a time, to give you some principles you can incorporate into your practice and hopefully into your daily life to improve how you function and how you feel on a day-to-day basis, because that's what this whole thing is all about. So thank you very much for joining me, or thank you much for tuning in later. Feel free to share, like, comment, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Thanks.